Today we're going to continue to talk about things that's related to Christ and John the Baptist. My temptation is to run away from John the Baptist, so it's very hard. I talked twice, I believe 2 weeks. It's John the Baptist characters and what he did and everything, and being the greatest competitor to Jesus Christ made him really an interesting person to learn about. And as I try to put John the Baptist character in peace and just to run away from that, but his followers did not leave me alone. As we hear in this text, we have Paul is talking about Christ as Paul is being the follower of Christ, and now he is encountering another Christians, but they're actually experiencing a kind of like mixed ideas between Christ ideology and John the Baptist baptism. But today I'm going to do my best to not talk much more about John the Baptist, but really to focus on the practice itself, the baptism, where this tradition came from. Is it something unique to Christianity? Are we only like we claim it's ours? And today we're going to do the two things. We're going to preach about baptism, and we're going to learn a little bit about communion. And this is the only two sacraments all Protestants hold. So if you are non-Protestant, you came from a different Christian, old one, or like Catholic or Eastern Orthodox, you know that you have many sacraments. They have big lists more than us. Some 7, some will claim more. So we only eliminated into 2 sacraments. And today we're going to learn about baptism, and later, as we come to the communion, we'll talk about this. As most of you know that I was born and raised in the southern part of Egypt, where I belong to a tradition called the Coptic Orthodox tradition. And as I learned very early that my family was very, very important for them to baptize all their children as younger as they can. Sometimes even if you can, after they're born, after a few days, or maximum a year or 2. So the ideology about the sooner you baptize a child is better. I have no idea where this was coming from. But I learned that many times that people were very afraid that if your child is not baptized, your child is not going to heaven. That's the ideology. Just do not forget that for not a long time ago, the rate of children die at birth was very high, and mothers too. If you imagine that was the case in the United States until not a long time, so you can imagine the situation is still even the same overseas in the third world. So for these simple-minded people who love their children, if they cannot save their life on earth, at least they want to be sure that their children are not going to be burned above or somewhere else. You may cannot understand that and feel how a mother or how a human will think about child with no problems will go to a bad place. So if you want to follow that, there's many things in the church history. So just want first to enlighten you about that. We are not unique about baptism or using water to wash somebody physically and spiritually. The tradition of using water is actually older than even Judaism and Christianity. The ancient Egyptians believed in the river Nile to be the holy water. So it was for them actually, they have to have some ceremonies and ways to be immersed in the river Nile so then they can be clean. So know that the ancient Egyptians, thousands of years before Christianity and Judaism, they have something to do with the idea of being immersed in the water and then being cleaned. And then later, as we see that, when John the Baptist was baptizing them, that was fully a Jewish tradition. When you are going into the river, the Jordan River, and getting baptized, to show and claim that your repentance is public now. You are repenting not only personally, but you're making a commitment to the whole world. And as we see today in this message, Christianity is trying to say, yes, we did not invent baptism, but we have our own touch. We have a different understanding of that. So that through baptism, that Christ claimed that He is your God, Christ not only baptizing you, the water is the visible part, but really the Holy Spirit is the one that's going to baptize you in your heart. That sound good? No problem yet? But baptism, believe me, has been a very big problem over church history. And I'm going to share with you some really very unpleasant news about how baptism and the idea of how to understand baptism was a very awful thing over church history. So as I told you that I came from tradition that's very strong about you need to baptize your child even in a few days or maximum a year. But also in the same tradition that I was born in, when I moved from being Orthodox to be Protestant, when I moved to be with the bad guys, I learned about what happened, how they see the other side. If you leave the church, if you leave the Coptic church and coming back, you have to do something they call rebaptism, even if you are baptized by other churches. The other churches are not valid. They are evil. They are anything. Worst part, even if you got married in a different Christian church, your marriage is called fornication. That's what they call it. It's adultery. That's why, so when you come there, actually you have to give again and again and again. And I wonder where these Christians got this so close-minded idea about other Christians. How the idea of grace and acceptance and openness can be that ugly. Believe me, not only the Orthodox believe this way. The Catholic did it to others, and we Protestants did it to them too. And we can tell you a little bit about history, what happened in the Middle East. So there's two times that I want you to remember in your mind. Around the 2nd and 3rd century, Christianity was still a baby that's growing and trying to find its own way in the world. It was not a religion that's a privilege if you are a Christian. It was actually a very big bad thing. You lose your family, you lose your job. Your life is on the line if you claim to be Christian. Do not forget, for centuries, Christianity was persecuted by the Roman Empire. So if you go back at this time, Christianity is a small cell trying to survive, and with many ideas, good ideas and bad ideas. And we heard about many heretics at this time. And the church was trying to find their own way. But around the 4th century was a big movement that's happened in North Africa. And please, I want you to imagine where North Africa is. I don't know how many of us like geography, So North Africa, if you heard about countries like Libya today, many troubles country, I'm sure you heard about it, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, that's North Africa. Can you imagine this place that you have no idea about what this all troubles come from? Can you imagine this was a very big Christian center for Christianity all over history for 500 years or 600 years? Can you believe that many scholars and many church fathers came out of this church? The sad news, if today you go to any of these countries, you will have no native Christian in these countries today. If you found any Christian today in these countries, they will be either expats or somebody converted recently to Christianity. And the question that struck me that how can you be the center of Christianity and after 1,500 years I cannot find anyone to be Christian in these countries? What happened? And that takes me to this big movement that's happened between the 4th and 6th century. There's a movement called Donatism. It's not donuts, not the favorite thing, it's a different one. Donatism is a group of people who really fought the Roman Empire and fought many church leaders. And to make things very simple for you, that during the persecution, the Romans will go and ask Christian, give us your scripture. At this time, Christian will have like a piece of, like few words from Mark or from Matthew. It was not like a print Bible like this. And they will hold it as something very dear to them. So when the Romans came and went to their houses, they will say, give us the part that you have from your own Bible. So some people said, no, this is our tradition, and they paid their life, and they were killed. Some say, no, you know what, I can show you how you can find it. So now the Romans are not anymore the bad one. The Roman became the Christian. Things changed. Then we go back and see who was the good one and who's the bad one. Who was the traitors for Christianity and who was really like paid their life for that. So then the conflict happened about what should we do with those who really were not a good Christian, who were easy to make a good deal and bad deals with the Romans. So they said any bishops or any pastors who worked with the Romans when they persecuted us, their baptism, their any work in the church is not valid anymore. So what should we do with them? We should do rebaptism. We rebaptize them. They have to come into the church in front of the public. They have to kneel down and they have to plead guilty and cry and say, please forgive me and accept me again. And if the church accepts them, then they have to accept to rebaptize again. That was a big, big problem that's moved into. So the locals in North Africa that belong to this Donatism fought back when Constantine came and other Christian leaders came. And Augustine came and tried to work everything out. Then the whole story became very messy and even bloody. So the Romans came and killed many people and kicked them out of the churches and tried to do many things because of disagreements. Can you believe that over the disagreement about baptism and rebaptism, people actually died physically? We're not talking about verbal abuse. We're not talking about somebody being bad or mean to you. Can you imagine over some theological debate in the church history, people paid their life? Actually, churches were burned. So those who supported the Roman Empire and supported the Catholic Church at this time, they got all the privileges and get all the protection. And these people, and I'm not saying who is wrong and who is right. I'm not saying which one has the right theology about what should we do with baptism or not. But can you imagine that Christians can disagree to the point where they get bloody and nasty and actually have no problem with taking somebody's life? This is our history. And this is the fight that's happened between the 4th and 6th century was a great preparation to make you now understand why today you cannot find any native Christian in these countries. Because the fight between Christian, Eastern, North African Christian, and Western Christian, or the Christian from Rome, prepared the stage to what was going on, what's happening in the 7th century, was the rise of Islam. Islam was the small group, really. And today a lot of people were surprised about how like a simple group of Muslims coming from the Arab Peninsula, they are not really educated, they are not that even strong as from an armed perspective. How this small group can invade this whole region? One, the reason, not the only one, was actually the fight between Christian and the hate between each other that's made them to welcome actually when the Arabs or the Islam was on the rise to go and take over these countries. So the fight between the Christian from the 4th and the 6th century was preparing the stage that to make us today when we wonder about how one day we had a place that we call the Church of North Africa that used to be a central one. And in the church history, you have 5 places that run Christianity for at least 500 or 600 years. Was one center was one in Alexandria, Egypt today. One was in, as we say, North Africa and around Algeria and Morocco and Tunisia and Libya. And another one was Rome. Everybody knows about Rome. And the other one was Jerusalem. And the 5th one was in modern-day Turkey. So these bishops, they will sit together, and anytime they meet, we call it ecumenical meeting, and they were equal heads. It's not like today the Vatican have the higher one or whatever. So at this days, for 500 years, these bishops will sit with each other equal and fight equally when they agree or disagree about something. What happened today? Everybody knows about Rome because we still have some representation in Rome. A little bit people know about still the Bishop of Alexandria, Egypt, because you still have a few survival in Egypt that we call Christian minority there. But I trust that many of us even can imagine that we used to have a bishop, big bishop, that was equal to the Bishop of Rome that used to be from North Africa, that today has no reflection at all, has no people there. I'm not saying that to condemn, and do not go into the wrong side that I'm pointing fingers at the Muslims or what happened. I'm pointing fingers at ourselves. There is nothing, I'm not pointing fingers at it's the Muslim history, the Muslim tradition. I have to respect it and I have nothing to do with it. My job is to look at my tradition, see what I did to my family. I'm not blaming strangers. I'm not blaming neighbors. I'm not doing. But how can I learn about what did I do with my own family, with my own tradition that made us so messy and so dangerous to each other in this way? So do not misunderstood me when I refer to some historical facts. I do not like to be part of any propaganda against Muslim or Islam or history, because that's not my ideology. That's not my favorite. But at the same time, we cannot deny historical facts. We cannot say, nope, it did not happen. It happens. How you understand it, how you want to translate it, it's your business. And today, I am trying to understand our history as Christian, to learn how sometimes we can go that far. And just to take you out, as I took you from a trip very quick to the history, early history, I want to take you close to the history in home here. So, and I want to take you closer to the history of the Presbyterian Church. It's good always to feel like these not good Christians, they were far away, like North Africa or Rome. We are better here in America. We are different from these guys. We don't do this to each other here. It's good to feel like reveal history, but it's not close to our own. Just want to tell you about that even when the Reformation happened, it was another big problem was the baptism. When the Reformation happened and the big leaders like Luther and Calvin and Zwingli, the big leaders, was another movement that called Anabaptist, which is fully about to fighting about that any baptism of the infant is not valid. And just to run away from that with all the problems, and you see that very clear for the Baptist tradition. If you go to Baptist or evangelical, many evangelical churches, they will insist on to baptize those who are adults. But I want to get you closer to home here and tell you, like in the 1840s, the southern part of the Presbyterian Church voted that the Catholic baptism is not valid, and anybody who converts from the Catholic Church to our church, this is in 1840s, this is not far away, that was here in the United States. The General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church issued a statement not to accept any of these Catholic. Why? Because they did not agree with us, because they believe in some doctrine, did not believe that only by faith you can be saved. So that was the statement. Thanks to God, the Presbyterian fought over and over and over. And the Reformation happened actually in the 90s. People forgot that. We did that to the Catholic. We all the time complain about the Catholic is doing it to us. We did it to the Catholic and say, because of the way they believe. Just imagine when somebody comes to a church and you just want to be part of your church and you give them all these things. So, you have to be baptized, you have to be remarried, you have to be all of that. And then we wonder about why people are sick of our church system. We wonder about why church just come once and run away from our churches for their lives. Can we see about the idea of having the baptism and having the communion? It should be a tool to help us, to be grateful, to be thoughtful, to be relieved. Why do you put more burden on me? If you want to break my back, already my back is full of many things as a human. A human does not need breaks more heavy things to break their back. They need somebody to say, take rest. The baptism was, you know how much we thought about should we baptize with a cold water or a warm water? We thought about should we baptize in an open water or a closed water? We should baptize by putting some drips on the head of somebody or immerse them fully in the water. Can you imagine? That was our history. And the sad part that we keep repeating that today in many different ways. We forgot this should be just something to make you feel better, to make you feel hopeful. What will hurt me if somebody was baptized as a child and then say, Pastor, I would like to do baptism as an adult because I feel it like, what will hurt me if they do that? What hurt me if somebody came and say, I was baptized but was really a child abuse minister and I feel like my baptism was not valid and not for me and I want to do it again. What this will hurt me if it's part of healing. How many times we do and fight as like smart people and fight with knowledge about which one has the best knowledge. And we forgot about something called pastoral care. The big sin of the church over history is not lacking knowledge, but lacking love. Not lacking have access. Everybody, if you sit with all these people, your head will spin. Everybody has a good statement. Everybody has a good argument to make about what should you baptize them this way or not, or this. But in the middle, we lose what's this all about. We're fighting about should we have a grape juice or have a wine. And we forget about what this whole thing about. We forgot the main message that's uniting us when we baptize today as Christian, as Presbyterian. We bring people together. We know that the children have no idea with what we do. They have no idea, but they only we do it. The mother and the father just want to bring them as a commitment. How many children baptized in a church and they have nothing to do with being actively and in the church and being faithful? And how many children have nothing? They have even no parents to raise them as Christian. By God's grace, always work in a gracious way. For those who are baptized in a church and those who have good family to raise them up and those who are not lucky in many ways. Even for somebody to put them on the right lane and say, you have to come to church on Sunday and you have to do this or that. Not every children were lucky like you. Many children have nothing of this. For somebody to put them on the path, to get them ready, to be able to have easy access. But the good news is God's grace has His way to find us. Has His way to find us baptized as a child or as an adult, or you have a good family that prepared you, or even you have a very terrible parents that did not prepare you. As today, as we come to learn about baptism, we're learning about this history to know how should we be as Christian, how should we act as Christian. And the message today about the baptism that He called them disciples. And the discipleship start with baptism, but always keep going in your life. You keep growing. You keep finding way to learn about things. And as I learned from my simple-minded mother, who just her biggest way to love me as a child is to baptize me. She never been a theologian. She have no idea about all this conflict and big things. But I know one thing. She loves her children very much. She wants to do anything. She's not sure that their children can make it as a children in a very poor country. But she wants them, even if they cannot make it on earth, they make it in heaven. You may look at these people sometimes and mock them and see that they are simple-minded. But it's coming from a loving place. They want to save their children. If they cannot do it on earth, they do it in heaven. And I tell you, one thing that I used to do, I used to work in a hospital where I used to work in the labor and delivery section. And it was really a very difficult place to work in because when a chaplain is called to these units, I'm very happy when they call for good news, but when a chaplain called for these units, it's always very difficult news. And I always wonder about the mother that's really just invite me to do baptism over this innocent being that just lost their life as they came out of their mother's womb. And I wonder about if I'm sitting there and just making an argument about, this is a useless thing. How are you just like their innocent babies going to heaven? This is the empty theological knowledge, is arrogant idea. But for this mother, she wants comfort. She wants love. She doesn't want somebody to teach her about what's right baptism and what's wrong baptism. She doesn't need a scholar to teach her and tell her what's the good thing and the bad thing to be a good Christian. She only needs somebody to understand her pain and suffering. And it's enough that she lost her baby to see him in front of her eyes. At least she wants the comfort that the baby is going to be in a better place. How many times we get arrogant about to try to convince people to believe in the way we want them to believe, versus knowing that they are crying, they are bleeding, they need your help. And I learned that all the knowledge, all the things that you can have from the world is not equal loving people and be with them. And this is what they want. I'm not judging you. I'm not saying, simple-mind people, and how can you believe what you are doing, or even just only abusing you, thinking like if you do not do that, God will not love you. Just be with people. So I want to remind myself and you, anytime you go into any of these debates, arguments, disagreements, ask yourself, are you doing all of that on the base of just trying to be right so you can feel good about yourself? Or really try to be Christian? And Christian means to be full of love and compassion. To be always remind yourself that maybe I love what I'm saying, I respect what I believe, but there is always room. Love is bigger than who is right and who's wrong. Love is stronger than who did it wrong and who's to blame and who's not to blame. Who takes credit and who do not take any credit. This is the Christianity that I want to belong today. This is not about we should not anymore hurt each other and call each other names because we believe difference. Because the source of love, the source of unity is Christ. The one who baptized is not the Baptist, it's Christ. It's not the pastor. The pastor could be very terrible, the one who touches the baby or do the things, or the one who does these things. The miracle is not coming from whoever, what's the name, if a female or male, a young or old. The power and the presence coming from God. And this God also can give a chance to this person who lead you in this communion, or this person who teach you about baptism. So God's grace is above and greater than even any preachers or any ministers. So even if any ministers upset you or made you feel like you doubt even your faith, remember that your faith was not in them. And God even used those who are sinners like me and others to teach us that His love and His presence and will always be if we believe. Amen.
Starling will bring the mic out.